Hello. Uh, my name is Tim Wright. I am the creator of the Western School of Initiatic Gnosis and Theosophical Mysteries. This isn't any kind of special, like, school. You don't need to join any initiatic organization to be part. It's basically a research group. And the way it works is we get together. You can join on Facebook or follow on Facebook. But we get together and we have a discussion of the initiatic current. It's a Western system of initiatic information and currents that come by, and theosophical mysteries. Theosophical in the sense of Jakob Boehme and some of the early German theosophists, not Blavatsky. Although I am not against Blavatsky, so it's not a distinguishing factor saying, oh, no Blavatsky and only Boehme. Actually, the theosophy which I subscribe to most is that of Blavatsky. I don't want to say it. And the theosophy of Saint Martin, um, which is it's pretty powerful stuff, and I'm not scripted right now. What I wanted to do was talk about Julius Evola and the Magical Group, um, because recently, um, well, let's rewind. Julius Evola was a mystic and pretty heavy political like activist in the early 1900s, and he was involved with several groups, and he came together with these people called the Group, which stands for fire, and he basically spearheaded a philosophical movement with his political fervor. But what really came out was his spiritual kind of energy, and this was the effect that it had on Italy. And he was the pretty much founder and head proponent of the Group. Uh, the Group was a group of esotericists in the time of the early 20th century, 1920s, so on or so forth, during World War One. Now, the Group was in Italy. They had fierce kind of political issues during that time, and I'm not interested in Evola for his politics at all. Evola's politics are Evola's politics, which is interesting to see. I've been doing some study because the point of this video is to introduce these books to people who may not know about them. It's taken years and years and years. In the 80s, we first had volume 1 of the Introduction to Magic. And then recently, in the 2000s, we have been able to acquire in English all 3 volumes of the Magical Journals of the Group. These are Introduction to Magic Volume 1 through 3. Recently, Volume 3 was translated, and I am extremely ecstatic to bite into these journals and writings for the very first time. So, in my studies of Julius Evola, I found some really interesting stuff about him. He has a autobiography that he did called The Path of Cinnabar, which is really, really good. I'm very much enjoying it. It gives, a lot of people don't know why they think the way they think. They just kind of have this expression of what they have in their brain, and they don't know where it comes from. Not with Evola. Evola knew exactly where his thoughts came from, and he credited a lot of this to the philosophers that he studied, and he goes over that in pretty much in super fine detail in his autobiography, The Path of Cinnabar. But Introduction to Magic, as you'll hear about in the books if you buy them, were originally newsletters or journals that were published by anonymous people. This is a very cool thing because the anonymous people wanted to have the spiritual impetus or whatever come out and help people toward this stuff that Evola was talking about and that they were believing in. Uh, uh, it was a philosophy that Evola eventually coined called magical idealism. Um, and I haven't learned a lot about that, but what I have learned is that he was pretty much saying that he was against traditional idealism and he was for the absolute individual. This is similar to the Brahman kind of way of the Atman. But it's powerful philosophy, but not only that, it's powerful esotericism, and I'm super happy to be able to finally dig into them. Um, so in my studies, I was reading in the Dictionary of Western Esotericism and Gnosis by Walter Hanegraaff, and I saw a article by Thomas Heckel, that talked about Evola and his kind of leanings. And so what it was showing is that Evola actually was tight with Iliade. So I broke out Iliade's journal and I looked at them, and Iliade says, "No, I didn't really know this guy. We did some letters together, but he didn't really know him." So I don't know if Hackle knew that. If I don't want to get into the criticism of these authors. But it was an extremely informative article in the Dictionary of Gnosis and Western Esotericism. And it talked about Iliade, like I said. And Iliade, he had a really interesting way of portraying Evola. Evola, and this is the point, it's like an apologetic for Evola. Many people are like, Evola's garbage, he's a fascist, he was some support of Germany, and brr, 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 brr. And if you want to go politics, yeah, go and do your thing politically, try to prove what you need to prove. But with Evola, the interesting point was, in his autobiography, he considered himself a warrior. And all throughout his political kind of launchings into that, he was rejected by all of these political warriors. Mussolini didn't want anything to do with him. Hitler didn't want anything to do with him. He was supposed to be like this alt right guy, but was ultimately rejected from the alt right due to his spiritual and very metaphysical leanings. So, despite what Evola wanted to do, he actually became a really, really good proponent of this philosophy. So, I'm super, super happy to be able to read these, to learn about him. I have another book of his called The Hermetic Tradition and a lot of ebooks, but primarily the Hermetic Tradition got me really interested in Julius Evola, and I started digging into him. But now we finally have all three of these volumes. And just so you know, like I said, the authors had pseudonyms, so all through the books themselves, you'll see the pseudonym basically of these authors who didn't really give their real names. So some of them are very profound, including commentaries on the Mithras liturgy of the Greek magical papyri. There's tracts that were in alchemy. There's lots and lots of philosophical writings, primarily in Volume 1, the green one up there. One of the first articles, which is very interesting, talks about they saw, well, this person saw, and I believe Evola was like buying into this, but since in his autobiography he calls himself a nihilist, I'm pretty sure that this is where he was in agreement. And it's the very first, article or chapter of the first volume. Anyway, he talks about how the individual only knows matter by his own experience and body. And I recently had a conversation was someone, an anonymous critic of this idea. And, science is an empirical fact. That's not what we're getting at. What's being said is that we only know this empirical reality through ourselves. So how empirical is it? And there's a philosophy called solipsism, uh, where a solipsistic philosopher will basically use themselves as a nucleus and then postulate everything out from there. So it's very interesting to see these kind of things being said in different ways. I really like it. Uh, Evola was one of the first proponents of an artistic expression called Dadaism. So there's so much to learn through all of this literature and all these teachings, but I wanted to let everyone know that they were available. You should really go pick them up. You can get all 3 volumes, which are about, I don't know, 1,000 pages, uh, for roughly $75-$80, and delivered pretty quickly. I mean, I got it very next day, so Amazon did their job. um, but I got this. I was reviewing it, and I just wanted to kind of go out there and talk about it. Um, I'm thinking I might do full studies on these books and present them one after another, and the teachings that they have. I don't know where we're gonna go with that. What my goal is to do is to get a brief synopsis of each one of these contributors' articles or excerpts, and then talk about them through my little Facebook group here. And then you guys can comment on it and tell me where I'm wrong, because obviously I'm not a scholar. I just pretend to be one on Facebook, and you can engage with me in this conversation, which is originally what the group was supposed to be, and what the Western School of Initiatic Gnosis is. It's just a discussion group, so you could talk with me about whatever you want. There's no hierarchy. There's no leadership. It's not like that. It's just a group that picks up initiatic authors, initiatic public sources, and talks about them, and potentially can create a sort of study group. And it'll sidebar and detract into all kinds of different other areas, but that's okay. The more the wiser. So anyway, that's a good little introduction to these books. I wanted you to hear about them, and hopefully you'll pick them up and read them with me. Bye.